What's up, race fans? You're watching Bazinga Autosport. My name is Gabe, and we are here today at the Skip Barber, well, for Skip Barber race at Lime Rock Park. Week 2 of the 2016 Season 2. And we are qualified third. And a fairly decent strength of field. As you may have guessed, this is a replay. I didn't get a chance to record this race live, unfortunately. It's a horrible decision on my part. And because this has probably been one of my best races that I've ever done in Skip Barber. Ahead of me is Sergio Aldaz, and behind me now, in third place, Mr. Morgan, I believe. I have the wrong name there. Let's double check and make sure that's correct. Joey. That's right, Joey Morgan. The reason why I'm putting this on my channel as a replay is because this race is just, again, one of the best that I think I've ever driven at Lime Rock Park, and I'm pretty happy with the results. It was a crazy race, definitely a crazy race. 25 laps here, and we've got sunny skies. So while this replay is playing in the background, I'd like to talk a little bit about a couple of forum topics that have died down over the past week. And at the time of this race, they were definitely hot in terms of how much attention and discussion they were both getting. Now, to start with, let's talk a little bit about Formula Renault. This is not really an issue in Skip Barber, although from time to time we do see these threads pop up. And in fact, I'm fairly certain that almost all of the car forums are going to have a thread like this on them from time to time. And basically it goes like this. This series is full of wreckers because I have had a horrible week. And this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And out of 13 races, I've been crashed out in 12, and it is not my fault every time. So, I am going to do a little bit of an editorial here. This is my opinion. There are some statistics that will back this up. There are people that will agree with this opinion, and there are people that are not going to agree with this opinion, and that's okay. It's definitely possible to have a slump in iRacing. It's definitely possible to have a slump in your career. And sometimes, when you get in an accident, it is 100% not your fault. It happens a lot. However, whenever I see one of these threads on the forums where there is somebody who is airing their frustration, I always call into question what kind of results they're getting and why they are venting their frustration on the forums. And if you're wondering, yes, I'm getting out of the throttle here because I'm trying to break away from, or help Sergio break away from the remaining pack, and Joey is definitely right behind me. So what about these threads? This is something that's a problem that's run pretty rampant in the Formula Renault series. Now, a lot of people are dismissing it as, well, it's a new car. There's a lot of people that want to try it, that haven't driven formula cars before, or open wheelers before. And I've seen a lot of evidence that suggests a lot of people drive the car with little or no regard to other people around them. Now, to be fair, Formula Renault 2.0, if you watch the races that they have on YouTube, you can definitely keep an eye on that, and the cars are incredibly twitchy. And they're difficult to drive. They're formula cars. And people are like, oh, they're slow, and yes, they're definitely slow, but they have functioning wings, and in my opinion, they're pretty quick. They're right on the edge of my ability to control a car. And I'm definitely no slouch, but I'm not an alien. I'm not a green skin either. So here's what I'd like to do. If you're one of the people that is getting wrecked all the time and it's not your fault, I'd like to go back to the old adage, and to pardon my language, but the old adage that says, if you constantly find yourself surrounded by assholes, you are probably the asshole. Now let's break that down a little bit, because you can't just get up on your high and mighty horse and say that to somebody and expect them to be okay with that. So let's talk a little bit more about why I'm willing to say that. And the first thing is this. Someone who's going to run many, many races and get wrecked out, almost all of them, is going to have difficulty no matter what car, no matter what track, anywhere. And that's because they either don't have the experience to know when they should back out of a situation that looks dangerous, or they're just overly aggressive, or they're not aggressive enough. So let's talk a little bit about that. Overly aggressive drivers are going to try to gain as many positions on the start as they possibly can. In oval racing, we see this happen a lot, especially in the NASCAR type series, where stock car racing, all of the cars are tightly packed together, and on the restart, you're trying to pass as many people as possible. Oftentimes, this can contribute to some really exciting racing because, well, drivers want to gain positions and they're willing to do anything to do that. However, in a formula race, despite the car being built like a tank, in my opinion, in a formula race, if you try and do this on cold tires, you're going to put your car in a position that may make it difficult for other people to deal with you. So overly aggressive drivers are the ones that usually get blamed. But that's not always the case. Sometimes an overly aggressive driver puts their car into a position where no matter what happens, they're going to get hit, or they're going to cause an accident. Let's talk about under-aggression. On the start of a race, if you are not aggressive enough and you're starting mid-pack or towards the front, you often run the risk of causing an accident by being hit from behind. Now, if this is the case, and you're getting hit from behind a lot, you might be the problem. It's not necessarily that the guy in front of you is expecting you to slow down more than usual, but if you're not driving right up to the guy in front of you's bumper, well, you're going to have some problems. You're going to have some problems with people behind you. So what does that mean? Well, it's important on starts to balance your aggression. You have to stay with the people that are in front of you because they are inevitably going to be slowing down because lots of cars are trying to file through the opening corners. But if you are too slow and leave too much room, you can potentially cause a pileup or an accordion effect, which is going to make things very difficult for the drivers behind you. So, moving on, balancing your aggression is important. Making sure that you're not putting yourself in danger by driving too slow, or putting yourself and others in danger by pushing the car because you feel like there is a little gap up the inside that you can probably squeeze your car into. Now, a lot of people have been complaining about issues where there are simply just horrible re-entries onto the track that's causing huge pileups. And I go back to Zandvoort for this. There was a video of someone backing up onto the racetrack while there were still race cars coming and they're sideways. Now, this is heinous. Absolutely, in my opinion, protestable. You do not back up onto the racetrack if there's still drivers coming down the track. And if you have spun, you need to get control of yourself, get control of the car, and before you do anything, make sure there's no other cars around you that are still traveling at a high speed. Now, to put that in perspective, yes, that person is wrong for backing out onto the track. But if we take a look at the situation, the driver who's complaining about being backed into did absolutely nothing to avoid the contact aside from moving his car slightly when he realized the driver was going to back up. If I'm faced with a situation like that, I immediately am wondering, what that driver is going to be doing, if they're going to try and back up onto the track or what they're going to try to do to recover, and if they're going to try and do that in front of me. The driver in the video who's complaining about getting backed into is in the right. He definitely should not have been backed into, but he left himself no margin for error. There was no chance that he was going to have a place to go if that guy decided he wanted to back up. He was in the throttle all the way up into the corner and was trying to outbrake someone who was behind him. This is not setting yourself up for success. It's not setting yourself up for keeping control of the car or keeping the car on the road or making sure that you get to the last lap so that you can fight for that position. So there has to be a little bit of common sense that comes in with driving a car like this. And people who are going to complain about how they're always getting wrecked, well, my only solution for you is simply this. Statistically, it is not likely that you are going to see 4 out of 5 accidents, or 4 out of 5 races where you have an accident that is not at least partially your fault. And by saying that, I mean there's going to be times where you could have done something to avoid the guy that was going to back out in front of you had you been a little bit paranoid about whether or not he was going to back out. I'm not talking about slamming on your brakes and stopping in front of every wreck until you see what happens and everyone gets a chance to recover. I'm just talking about getting out of the throttle a little bit so that you can tell and you have a chance to react to something that is strange going on in front of you. And there's nothing wrong with this. Now, let's talk a little bit more about sim racing. In a real race car, you have direct feedback from your actions and inputs on the throttle and on the steering and on the brakes. You can see other drivers around you. You can see you basically are there. In sim racing, you have a ping delay. And sometimes that delay is 3 to 4/10 of a second before the guy behind you or the guy in front of you who may reside in another country can actually see that you've made a change to your velocity, you've made a change to your direction. iRacing netcode, despite what people say, is amazing. And in my opinion, there is an amazing amount of technology that goes into allowing drivers to race so close. However, there is a limit to what you can do with that. And oftentimes, people underestimate that limit. If you don't allow for time for netcode, then you are going to have accidents. And that means that sometimes you're not going to do what a real race car driver would do. You're not going to make the same decision that he's going to make. And that's because you have to allow time for the information about what you're doing with your car to reach that other driver. So let's just say that for some reason you're in a slump. And I'm talking about a slump where you've been wrecked 6 of 7 races, or 12 of 13 races, or 35 out of 36 races. And you've sacrificed a ton of iRating and a ton of safety rating. And it's definitely not your fault. Well, let's stop and take a look at a couple of things. The first thing that I want you to look at is your starts. Are you being aggressive, or are you being not aggressive enough? Do you have balanced aggression? Don't look at a single race and decide whether or not that is going to be your baseline. Look at all of your races overall. Look at races over the course of time. See how many incidents you're piling up. And see when you are making decisions to make moves on the racetrack that could potentially put you or someone else in danger, or to cause a potential accident. Is it early in the race, or is it later on in the race? You'll notice in this race here that I've had several opportunities to try and pass Sergio, and I have taken my foot out of it because I know that the two of us are so close in speed that there is no way that I'm going to be able to pull ahead of him. And so if I stay behind him, I can benefit from his draft, and I don't have to work as hard to drive the car at the limit. I'm letting him do that. Now Joey, the guy behind me in this video, he's also doing the same thing, recognizing that, hey, this is a long race, there's 25 laps total, and maybe it's best if we don't fight the whole time, because that'll allow more drivers to come from behind and potentially catch up to us. Now, there are little slides that we see Sergio make from time to time in this video, and that's because he's trying to drive the car to the absolute limit. So, if you're having problems, check your aggression. Are you making the aggressive moves at the right time? The next thing is do you have car control? Can you drive side by side with somebody through corner after corner after corner? And are you able to make a decision to see that person if you need to? Next, you need to look at how many incidents you are accruing throughout your races. If you're accruing a lot of incidents, there's definitely a reason for that, and it's not all somebody else's fault. Of course, all of our goals are to have no incidents throughout a race, to have no off tracks, no contacts, nothing else. But sometimes that stuff is inevitably going to happen, and you have to make sure that you are paying attention to when you could have done something different. So the last and most important thing is that a lot of drivers on iRacing, especially the ones who launch the complaints, are the ones who are frustrated by somebody else's incompetency. While I understand this, my other concern is simply the fact that most of the time these drivers will scream that the person in front of them or the person that wrecked them is completely and utterly incompetent. But they don't really have the option to protest. Now, I'm not saying that you should protest every incident, and I'm not saying that if you can't protest the incident, then the other person, you're entirely at fault. Please don't take that. Please don't understand that. That's what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that lots of people have a tendency to blame the other driver for competency issues, and I don't think that this is correct. In my experience with iRacing, 99% of the drivers have no intention of causing an accident. They have no intention of driving poorly. They have no intention of making mistakes or making the wrong decision. And sometimes they're just going to make the wrong decision. And that's okay. If you have one of those drivers around you, you need to make sure that you are being careful with how you deal with them. Chances are, if there's any part of the contact that is your fault, or something that you could have done to avoid it, the person that you're involved with didn't do it on purpose. And acting like that person did it on purpose just takes away any kind of credibility that you have, whether it's on the forums, whether it's in your protests, or in the community in general. So make sure that you're really paying attention to that. Sometimes people just have an accident. They just run into each other, and there's nothing that can be done about it. Both drivers are trying to pass one another or to win the race or whatever it is, and that's absolutely fine. But don't assume that every single driver that you encounter that you get wrecked by is a driver who is incompetent, because chances are they're trying just as hard as you are to avoid contact. Now, if you're protesting them, then that's an intentional thing, most likely, and there's a good chance that you probably should be paying attention to that, and whether or not it's your fault, at that point, if they've done something to be protested, then that's a little bit different story. So in the closing laps, make sure that you are willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. And watch your mirror. There's a lot of people on the forums that will tell you if you watch your mirror, you won't be as fast. And that is true. However, if you don't watch your mirror at all, you are going to get clipped. And you're going to get clipped often. Sometimes a person is trying to be clever and outbrake you, and there is no way that they are going to make the corner, at least on the standard driving line. And if you decide to hold your driving line, they are going to hit you. Whereas if you just go out of the driving line a little bit to give them that room, well, you may lose the position, but you're probably not going to win you're probably going to win the war. And if the person is successful in taking the position away and you're able to avoid contact, well, maybe they are faster than you or just a little bit faster than you. Getting frustrated about it just ruins your race, because the person that's driving the other car isn't going to see that frustration in you at all. They're going to think, I just made an astonishing overtaking maneuver, I outbraked that other driver, and I beat him through the corner. Now, does this mean that he's not going to quote-unquote learn his lesson about driving recklessly and probably making a bad decision on his race car placement? Absolutely. But you're still in the race and you've only lost one position. And chances are, if he really is a dive bomber, and he really is someone who is incompetent, he's going to wreck, and you're going to be very close to him at that point. So, measure your words and measure your thoughts and emotions when you're in the car. So we have moved up to first position here. We're on lap 22. And it is still a three-way train of Sergio, Joey, and myself, with me leading at this point. The drivers who were in this race as lapped traffic did a fantastic job of getting out of the way. And I just have to say thank you to all of them, and thank you, of course, to Sergio and to Joey for making this an incredible race. Both of you are fantastic competitors, and I hope we get a chance to race one another again. So, for my diatribe, and I'm going to be getting off of my full soapbox here in just a moment, but I'm not trying to tell people who are getting wrecked a lot to buck up or that it's your fault. I'm definitely not trying to tell you that. But you're going to have a lot easier time with iRacing if you decide that you are going to be a little bit more careful with your car placement, be a little bit more paranoid, and just drive safely. Maybe you're trying to drive too far above your station. And if you're having a slump of bad results, then just hang in there. If you get angry or you come into a race thinking that you're going to do poorly or that you're in a slump and someone's going to wreck you, chances are it's probably what's going to happen. So take care of yourself. And don't worry about what other drivers are doing. Drive defensive. Drive like you're on a freeway in California at rush hour when everyone's still driving at high speed. So we're coming back around to the white flag here. I am just off the off the stern of Sergio, and this is the race for the finish here. So I'm definitely going to pull out to the side. And let's take a look at this from the chopper point of view since we are in a replay. But this is over half a lap side by side with me and Sergio. Or Sergio and I, pardon my sloppy English. And Joey is just waiting to pounce. And of course he gets his chance right here. I go into a little slide. I'm able to correct it. I see that he's going to the left-hand side, so I hold the car into the right and drop to third place. Now hoping that I can come out of this corner and get a run for the finish line. And it just wasn't quite enough. So we ended up finishing third place which is not too terribly bad considering all things considered. Third place at Lime Rock Park, and for a race like this, where we were within 3/10 at the finish line and within about 7/10 the whole race of one another, I'd have to say that a clean race like this is definitely a welcome sight on the roadside. So thanks for watching Bazinga Autosport. Thanks for riding along with this race. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm really glad that I was able to share it with everyone and didn't have to worry too terribly much about the fact that I didn't record this race. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit the like button. If you enjoyed my diatribe and my opinion piece, then go ahead and hit the like button too. Let me know in the comments what you think, or if I'm completely off base, or if there's some things that I missed. I'm sure that there definitely is. So next week, Skip Barber is at one of my favorite tracks, Brands Hatch, the Grand Prix layout, and we will definitely see you there. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and thanks for riding along. Bye-bye.